Good evening, friends. Raj here again with another Raj. And I have Vivek. And Vivek, now I'll tell you, I have my best friend's name is Vivek. We are childhood friends. We studied together.
Wow.
So I have Raj and Vivek. So I would not miss Vivek today.
Okay.
Yes. So you all know Ray Talks. It's become kind of a 4 o'clock Saturday show where I invite, and all the leaders who come on show humbly accept to be, though it's weekend and evening, to be with the Ray Talks dedicated audience. Friends, today we have a subject, which will give you a lot of opportunities in a different format for us to understand. A subject very simple: agribusinesses in agricultural transformation. What is this all about? We all know. But a new era of agriculture has dawned, and agricultural businesses are critical to design, develop, and deliver the desired inputs to the farmers and help the farming communities to sell their produce, facilitate to be business oriented, and above all, offer services from farm to fork. Agribusinesses have immense potential in productive resources like feed, seed, fertilizer, equipments, energy, machinery, agricultural commodities like raw and processed commodities of food and fiber. And they also facilitate services like credit, insurance, marketing, storage, processing, transportation, packaging, and whatnot. But what these guys are going to discuss with me today is what differentiates through technical push. I have with me Team Kalgudi, who are going to speak to me today on how agribusinesses play a key role in agricultural transformation and as aggregations. What is the role of technology in enabling agribusinesses in transformation? Will AI, artificial intelligence, and ML, machine learning help? Frankly, in agriculture, AI and ML are rare words, rare letters. So let's hear from them how this can be leveraged for our agricultural practices and how are the risks and disputes managed. So with this brief introduction about the topic, let me have the privilege of introducing my panelists. Raj Vallabhaneni. He is a serial entrepreneur, passionate about digital transformation at the grassroots. Early steps towards this include a noteworthy contribution of iAgriMark, and rather, I don't know how I read, iAgriMark C, an agri-marketing automation product implemented across multiple states in India. This enabled farmers to realize better prices for their produce. One of those companies who had started this much earlier than what's been practiced and been promoted today. Raj's current focus is on Kalgudi, a deep tech digital convergence platform for agriculture and rural livelihoods. Kalgudi ensures everyone is well informed and creates intelligent marketplaces in imports, outports, and direct to consumer. Raj's foundation in technology has been through his work at technology giants like Honeywell, Microsoft, and Google. And today he's working for the sake of agriculture. Raj was co-founder of Rofus, a 2,000 people company. Rofus was acquired by GlobalLogic. Raj is founder of Vasudhaika and manages Kalgudi too. Raj, I welcome you to this Ray Talks as Ray speaker. You're welcome.
Thank you, Raj.
Now, let me take the privilege of introducing Vivek. Vivek Sahgal. He has got 30 plus years of experience in sales, marketing in leading organizations, and out of the 10 years plus in analytics. His stint at Hindustan Lever has obviously given him a lot of leadership skills. His extensive business and data analytics experience adds the edge to currently Vasudhaika's technology progress. Vivek is a BA Economics Honours graduate from Delhi University and an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Vivek, I welcome you too.
Thank you, Raj. Pleasure to be with you today.
Same here. And this is my honor that both of you are here. Incidentally, we are not in a physical platform like we did in Digital Ag India conference on 4th February in Park here. So I won't be able to give you physical trophies or bouquets or garlands. So please accept our wishes, and hopefully soon we'll meet on the same platform with a physical presence. Friends, let me also take you through. By now, all of you know about Ray Consulting. Another Raj here, founded Ray Consulting after a long 25-year stint in agri industry, having worked with companies like Rallis, Kevinova, PI Industries, and my last assignment with Nagarjuna Group. I felt there was a space for agri consulting in India, and we could do with an integrated platform in agri domain. Thanks to my industry colleagues, they encouraged me. They said, yes, Raj, you can jump into this. And today, Ray Consulting brings substantial experience to the diversified agricultural sector by advising leading players across in India and Southeast Asia on a range of strategic, commercial, and operational issues. Probably, we understand the unique dynamics and economics of agricultural value chain, the critical issues and challenges seeking to grow and elevate performance. We work with all the segments of agri-value chain. So if companies are looking for transformation, companies are looking for growth, or just add value in various ways, you can think of us Ray Consulting. So Raj and Vivek, with this brief introduction of both of us, I will come to both of you. See, both of you had very unique past, nothing to do with agriculture. So I want to put a question to both of you. Briefly take us for my audience sake and for my sake. So what made you to bring to this unique industry, including what were you doing in the past? And then I'll come to my specifics of agribusinesses a little later. Yeah, Vivek to start with.
Yeah, so though my background had nothing, as you mentioned, to do directly with agriculture, my first exposures in corporate life was, very much in rural areas. And as many of you would be aware, Hindustan Levers has a huge focus and gets all management trainees to spend a lot of time understanding the entire Indian ecosystem. And one of our stints ensures that we spend 8 weeks living in a village with a villager in his house to understand how the how our rural ecosystem works. So that was an eye-opener to me, but that was way back in 1987. And it was quite, a transformation in 8 weeks to spend living in a small village in their house and understanding what happens there. That got me interested, and I was always keen to, look back. I felt that though I wouldn't have made up my mind to have a career looking at that area per se, many other lucrative options keep coming up before you at that stage particularly, and the economy was very different in those days. But I always had this desire to look back every 10 years to see how much have things really changed. I just wanted to see from a perspective, what has really changed and where are we heading? So that there was always in the back of my mind. My career kept moving in different directions. I left Levers, started my own activities, which had some kind of link-ups with agriculture, but not directly, totally linked up to it. And then as we went along, got more involved with looking, more involved with the technology side. So it was more, I think, about a year and a half back that when I was having a discussion with Raj and understood what he was doing in the agriculture domain and the whole area. And that really fascinated me. So I said, yes, this is something that I want to spend much more time on, apply my understandings of business applications. There is a lot of interesting activity being done on the technology side by various players. We must make it actually move in the market. And that's where I decided to work along with Raj, and we are looking at that area. So that's my fascination of the whole agriculture in rural areas.
This is something, I rather appreciate about Hindustan Levers when they take you all guys as management trainees. They ensure that you spend a lot of your time in rural areas, and that makes what you're all today. Probably that's one company in India which has given the largest leaders in the world. Uh, each one of you is leading a company or doing something extraordinary. Great, Vivek.
Yeah.
And I'll move to Raj. At least, Vivek comes from, he has spent time in rural areas. You've been an IT guy. I mean, IT, Microsoft, Google, Honeywell.
I was actually born and brought up in a village. Even till today, we don't have power in that village.
Oh.
And I was never a good student, or spending all my life and time in father being a teacher and then farmer, and spent all my playful time and everything in the fields and villages kind of stuff, right? Rural settings.
Which is that village, if I may know, or which area?
It's in it's about 60 kilometers from Vijayawada. It's almost 8 kilometers away from Bay of Bengal.
Oh.
So, but from there again, fascinated by the technology, studied in satellite and digital communications, went to Honeywell, building intelligent networks, and then to Microsoft in US, and also heading the engineering for Google. All the while struggling to kind of see what's technology, where do we spend it, whatever we have learned and where do we spend it. Kept solving the problems for the world, I guess, in terms of lifestyle problems, or making your cars more intelligent, or maybe helping you to find better information. But some of the statistics I started looking at started worrying me. For example, I don't want to pick names, but 98% of the India searches goes through one major, right? You know who it is, right? But if you actually look deeper into what people are searching for, most of it is either Tollywood, Bollywood, and the porn and politics and So the point is that the information is available. Again, the same time, if a farmer tries to understand what is 17-17-17 or NPK,
yeah,
you hardly get any result, right? So the technology, there's a big chasm between that, the technology, how it is going, and the real needs that what majority of the people have. So that got me worried to kind of, why don't I do something in there? And it took 10 years for me to understand that I don't understand agriculture that well, right? And more importantly, after spending almost 20 years now in the agriculture sector, one being I-Agri Mark, you said, Indian Agriculture Marketing Complete. That was the acronym for.
Wow.
And, we handled over, 2 lakh crores of worth of primary produce from the farmers to the traders. And interesting enough, farmers were not happy. I mean, so there was something else happening in terms of not just getting the output produce remunerative price itself is not making them profitable. So started digging deeper on that. And now I'm at a stage, actually, I think working in agriculture, actually, I'm doing a favor to myself.
Wow.
Right? In the sense that so I look at farmers, yeah, there are plethora of problems, but we, like you, me, and Vivek or anyone on this call, we spend a lot of efforts and money and in terms of the taxes that goes into maybe subsidies and whatnot, and we buy food, and we all talk about it, and we conveniently ignore the facts also, the counterfeits and all this adulteration that happens, what we eat in terms of let's say almost poisonous food, and sometimes emanating from some malpractices, or sometimes emanating from that just ignorant and unfortunately uneducated farmers. See, this whole system is it's intertwined with these information asymmetries and the problems at every level. So that's where we started building this platform called Kalgudi. Kalgudi, by the way, the name is, it's actually Stone Temple in Karnataka. By the way, most of my time spent in Karnataka. So Stone Temple, it's known as. So that's where we started building this. It took, by the way, it's not a startup where you could just like, quickly create a company and like an exit, right? So the first version we could launch in it took 6 years for us to launch, right? With over 100 people, standardization of the commodities and many challenges across the board. But fortunately, like, we have made very good progress with people like Vivek and many of you helping us. So yeah, I'm very grateful that like, I have got this opportunity, at least having the technology and interest in the agriculture. And I'm really looking forward to kind of, making a positive impact in this.
That's a killing combination, Raj. I would mention, Vivek. See, agriculture, for some reason, we always felt, being from the industry, that technology का काम नहीं आएगा, कुछ नहीं करेगा. But now, I get involved with people like you when I talk. Now it made us to hold a Digital Ag India conference where you saw. It made so much difference. I'm sure, and we saw in last 4 or 5 months in this pandemic times, I think this technology has come to a huge support to agriculture in this field. So thank you so much for taking us through your thing, the reason why you come and your past. Now let me start with my schedule of agribusinesses for which we are here. You see numbers are swelling. Vivek and Raj, that's an interest audience show in this. You as leaders and the subject. Friends, my audience, will surely take questions from you. Some of you will have an opportunity to speak to Raj and Vivek directly, but maybe a little while after I finish talking to them, because most of the questions of what you had in mind, probably they would answer without you putting to them. And in case some of you want to have, you don't want to come on call, but want to post some questions, post your questions in Q&A. So we'll try to take some of those questions also, right? So with that, I request all of you to be tuned, and then we'll surely take you to talk to both of them. So let me start again. Let me go to Vivek. Vivek, how agribusinesses play a key role in agri transformation?
Yeah, Raj. Great. That's a good question to put the whole context of our discussion into. So let's broadly take a step back and see and understand what is the current situation, particularly in the Indian context, on the entire agri ecosystem. So the first thing that we'll all look at is that the producers are very many. That's the key cornerstone of our entire agriculture ecosystem, where we have a large number of producers. I think the figure goes into beyond 150 million of them. So we have large number of producers. It's a very different ecosystem from industry or manufacturing. And that's a key factor that we should keep in mind. Our producers are very many, 150 million plus of them. They have a lot of other stakeholders that they continuously interact with dynamically. That's another big difference that this ecosystem has. And I'm purposely keeping on calling it an ecosystem rather than an industry, though we do call agriculture industry. Each of these is an individual. The farmer per se is a micro-entrepreneur. And let's look at him that way, that the producer is an entrepreneur in his own right. He is looking for the gain he will make at the end of his season and what he can get out of his assets. So he is market driven. He's the fundamental cornerstone of what everything is happening. But there are so many of them. And we have to think of how does this whole ecosystem operate with these very large number of players. Now the players beyond the producer itself are very large in number, and they by and large are not very large organizations. So the ecosystem is dotted with very large numbers of players, but they produce a very huge ecosystem. Our total agriculture, the whole ecosystem has a very large volume and value play in it. It is, as we know, it contributes to whatever percentage we like to tout it as. I think the direct figure we keep saying is 15% of the GDP. but it employs 50% of our workforce. But that's the direct work, that's the direct agriculture system. Now, when you add on the rest of it all to it, it's a much larger ecosystem. Now, in this context is what we have to look at. Next step, or what are we looking at? We're talking about transformation. So I give you a background of what is the current context of our ecosystem and what is the transformation we are looking at. Obviously, the fundamental transformation can be summed up in a line like double the farmer income in a sustainable manner. That's a very one-liner to put, but complex to implement. Now, as we look at trying to do that, the key factors we are looking at is the transformation is that this entire system is moving towards being demand-led. It was for a long time supply-led, where it was shortage-oriented, etc. Now it's not just demand-led, and that's the only way it can give the transformation that we want. If our goal is to double farmer income in a sustainable manner, it has to be demand-led. It has to be very market-driven, so that it's dynamic. That's the only way it can ever be sustainable. Any system that has to be sustainable has to be significantly market-driven, so that it's responsive. So that's a key factor. And if we are to look at that, we have to keep looking at how does this ecosystem provide the right kind of produce all the items that a rising income group across the country is looking for. The demand patterns keep changing every few months to years as the income levels are going up. And we also, obviously, if we have to meet that goal that we have set before us, we have to take our legitimate place in the international agriculture ecosystem. Now, that requires the entire ecosystem to move in tandem. It has to move in tandem. And that is where the transformation is required to come in. And that's where the entire agri-businesses play a very, very key role. So the key question to ask, before we get into what is the role, etc., is to first define who are the agri-businesses. You had outlined some of them in your introduction talk itself, where you outlined there are obviously the producers, which by and large in the country today are small farmers. We do have some, corporates, etc., doing a very small activity, but at the overall ecosystem, they're a very minor player. So they are the producers we have to look at. We have the input players, who again vary right from small input players to very large organizations, providing the various kind of inputs that we have. Then we have the output intermediaries, the output players who help get this produce to the folk or to the trading area, etc. And then we have the processing industry, which itself is a very large area in itself. And the entire ecosystem of trading, exports, the logistics players, the whole segment in that, and the financial intermediaries. Now we're really talking of a very, very large ecosystem, and their role can only be fulfilled if these businesses transform. These businesses therefore play a far, far more important role than we assume that, say, it is, traditionally we will often look at, say, government or impact players are the key people who will play a role in transformation. They at best can guide to some extent and help in being so-called umpire. It is the market-driven interplay of all these systems, which is a very humongous system, that will help reach that goal. So that is where the role of businesses is the most important in transformation of the agriculture sector.
I mean, see, when you speak, right from ecosystem to the delivery, I think there's so much complexity involved here, especially, agriculture being a kind of an unorganized sector, all said and done, putting all these things together. Raj, I'll come to you with a thing. What is technology's role in enabling agribusinesses in transformation, taking forward from where Vivek has left?
Yeah, Raj, as Vivek mentioned, right, like small producers and, the problem is also compounded by many of the small and inefficient links. Particularly, we know that how inefficient our supply chain system and, again, it's one of my famous example. the most inefficient transport system in the world is supposed to be the bullock cart, right? So with respect to the effort involved and the finances involved and all those things, right? Everything that the farmer faces in terms of the inputs they buy or the transportation services they take, or everything is crippled by inefficient supply chain systems. Again, so now is the supply chain systems are because of everybody's because it's a systemic problem, or where is this problems coming from? Today, if you look at a tractor owner or a harvester or maybe a supplier or a lab or a trader or anybody is providing a small service in the agri sector, what are the key problems they're facing, right? And today, it is working. Today, we are actually feeding, let's say, over 1 billion people. That's meaning that it's working somehow. But how is that somehow is happening today is farmer knows someone, that someone knows someone else, and then that someone knows someone else. Finally, gets a number for providing a pesticide or whatever, right? So it's very inefficient, and there's a lot of information asymmetry also plays a big role in there. But now, if you actually look at agri businesses, right? So the key problems for them are discovery problem, making themselves discoverable, right? So in the sense that many times we go to the field and talking to the farmers about, hey, you have this particular fumigation or whatever this technology or the tool available next door or maybe in the next village, but they say they don't know. So the discoverability is a big problem. When there is services available, people are available with information and ready to help, starting from even the financials and this kind of loan services and all this. Discoverability is a big problem. And then the next one is the standardization. And unfortunately, the diversity is actually working against in Indian agriculture, the diversity with respect to the names, right? We call Banganpalli and same thing is eaten in Lucknow as Safeda. And it's not about the market problem. That is actually the problem of efficient information dissemination and the tools and services provided. And the other thing is, again, as Vivek mentioned, is large number of small players. Aggregation is really, really important. Any businesses to plan and focus on a particular area or make themselves ready for these kind of businesses. There are no aggregations that are currently available. And all said and done, even agribusinesses they need to follow some statutory processes and policies in terms of raising invoices and keeping their books. All these things are mandatory for them to follow. So a single person doing a small business in agriculture, it gets really tough. And if they fail to do that, it actually hurts in terms of effectively linking this whole agriculture ecosystem with respect to transparency and traceability, right? So these are actually crippling with respect to with respect to these problems actually can be solved through technology. Again, making the agribusinesses discoverable and aggregations, anticipations, and dynamically transforming or standardizing the commodities and the service needs, and helping the ecosystem so that connecting the problems and solutions, and they are better equipped to actually solve those problems than maybe you and me sitting in Hyderabad. So the technology can play a big role in standardizing and helping the discovery happens and creating these linkages.
And who could do better than you, who's coming from so much technology background and the passion for agriculture? That's great.
We are making our best effort in here.
Yes, I think that's been felt. The result is visible. Vivek, I again come back to you. Based on what Raj mentioned or spoke about, assuming technology solves the aggregation problem, can agribusinesses utilize it given the challenges in tech adoption in the target segment, say amongst agribusinesses adoption?
Yeah. So single word, yes. But to expand the question and go into the depth of it, I think one of the challenges that when we look at the agriculture ecosystem, there is this often vilification of the players. And I strongly look at it the other way around. There is this constant thought that a lot of people have to look at each of the intermediaries as the cause of the entire inefficiency. That's not necessarily true. They actually bring about a very, very effective system. Some of our intermediary transaction costs per se are, if you benchmark them across the world for this kind of system, are definitely amongst the lowest. Our trading systems, our procurement systems, etc., are very, very low cost. And this is something that's been recognized all over. The challenge is that we don't bring it to large scale. So adoption and these players are heavily market driven. From everybody in the system, and we, wherever we look at it, the producer is market driven. He's looking for gain. He may be a small farmer. We do think of him as illiterate, etc. Yes, there are those challenges. We can't ignore those. But he is looking for a gain, and he looks how to get his gain in a sustainable way. That has to be provided to him. All the other players are not necessarily, there is a feeling that we have that they're there to exploit the system. There are the bad players and there will be those chances. But the market system itself is moving towards providing the most effective solutions. So what is it that technology can provide to all these players who are very conscious of their costs? They are very cost-effective players. Each of them who's operating in India, to survive in the Indian marketplace, you need to be very cost-conscious. You have 10 other people breathing down your throat who will pull you out of the market if you're not. So they're very cost-conscious. And how do they this thing? So the single biggest thing, obviously, is gratification, which is monetary gratification that any market player would look at. But I see the role that technology plays in a big way with aggregation is market expansion. It helps every player to look at beyond his localized activity. When we were a smaller ecosystem, you produced for what could be sold because your ecosystem was selling into a very small geographic area. So you're constrained by that and you kept producing exactly that. How technology enables every player to look at a very large geography, to look at specific needs across different times of the year. So it expands our scope to keep producing well. We are not necessarily going to be able to cut down costs dramatically because I'm coming from the fact that our costs are pretty low anyhow. But we expand the markets, and that is how we will have a much larger game to play. And that's where most of the players are conscious, they are capable. Even working recently in with some input players in rural UP, we were quite fascinated to learn that almost 40% of the target group had smartphones. So it is not as if technology is not there. We currently are close to 500 million or some figure close to that internet users. So there's a large expansion of technology available. As Raj mentioned, it does get used for purposes other than knowledge usage. Yes, but that's what somebody wants at that moment. If it can be used to provide him better monetary return or his better business, which is his farm production or trading, he'll definitely use it for that. So the adoption is there. It is there to be grabbed by whoever in the system wishes to grab it. And it will result in market expansion in a big way. And will start providing us capability to do things at scale. The two challenges we have is that the agriculture system is still very localized. Okay, which is what we need to break in and make it far more national to start with. Bring in the scale to take it international. You can only be trading internationally if you have scale. So that is where technology has to build in that aggregation and help us bring in that scale to be international, to take us to scale nationally. And yes, there's a huge role that, and all the folks are very keen to use it. We have to show them the path.
Right. See, aggregation, like last time when I was speaking to Raj, he was mentioning a couple of examples of, one is on procurement part. I think you mentioned with the example of sickle, how you'll bring down the price of a sickle, the last end user, the farmer, by aggregating. And then you also spoke about, I think that the other example was the pickles or something. Where there is a buyer who's looking for it, and there is a seller who's looking for a buyer, and you brought all those things together. But you also mentioned to me, Raj, while you're speaking you said you involve a lot of AI and ML involved in this.
Correct.
So I want to understand from you how, maybe you can take as a case study from Kalgudi, how you're enabling this transformations by using AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yeah, I think those words are kind of aliens to agriculture industry, but it's been used quite regularly already. For example, there are many tools available in looking at an image of a pest and identifying the pest, and even suggesting the pesticides for it, or estimations that are being done with respect to pricing, and those research is happening all the time. But coming to this an agri-business perspective, AI and ML is quite distant, and again, to sum it up, as Vivek was saying, it's going to be a market driven and large number of small players, right? And effectively we're talking about being market driven, a kind of in a suite of marketplaces, both for the input, as you said, pickles, or the sickles, or output marketplaces, or service marketplaces, or we're talking about a suite of marketplaces. And in this case, they need to be intelligent, right? So what is the intelligent marketplace? To understand an intelligent marketplaces, you need to understand what is not an intelligent marketplace.
Obviously.
Right. So let's say a listing site, right? I'm not saying that's not intelligent, because but yeah, there is some intelligence built in there. But it lists a list of service providers, A, B, C, D, and somebody goes there and searches for whatever he needs, and get the phone numbers and call them. And most likely, the service provider would have advertised his business for a listing fee or that kind of stuff. And when you need the service, you call them. Very likely that you don't fit into their scheme of service offerings. You keep calling next one kind of thing, right? And then you negotiate on your own. You understand the terms, what is that that service provider offers, and you close the deal. That's how most of the marketplaces today work, right? It's actually pull based, right? The expectation is the service taker exactly knows what he or she wants, and they know how to search, what to look for, they know how to compare, and they know exactly what are the terms mentioned, and take the service, right? Now imagine a farmer trying to find a pesticide, right? Now it's not a brands like an iPhone, right? Pesticides, the brands are different, and they also change the brands based on the culture or the locality, right? And he doesn't even remember the brand.
Yes.
Now, how does he search? What do we think goes in the farmer's mind when he goes to the marketplace to find a pesticide, right? Most likely the symptoms, right?
Yeah.
And also the farmer doesn't think that it's important to give the entire context of what crop he is looking for which crop he is looking for, what stage that crop is in, and what is exact situation, condition, right? All these things are it's impossible to expect farmer to pull from the marketplace. All bets are off. Whereas the intelligent marketplaces, that what we're talking about here is, they should be able to help the same farmer, navigate easily and find what he or she needs. And more importantly, connect this, the opportunity, or the problem, again, farmer going there with a problem, right? It's the problem is not always solved by a product buying. Yes. And there's agri-businesses that kick in, maybe there's a people providing services, or maybe just the input suppliers, or maybe, harvester kind of people, or the implements, right? Many things can need to potentially put together in a solution where the problem gets solved. So now that's meaning that we are talking about an intelligent marketplace which understands all these things. Right? So that's where the artificial intelligence kind of comes in. So and again, like, what can it do? Let's say, right? So starting from information asymmetry, right? Like, there is an advisory that goes from ICAR or like, an agriculture university. So understanding whom is it relevant to, and changing that, like, the translating into the local languages, or making it a bite-sized information snippet so that the farmer understands it and, starts using it, right? So, for example, like, very interesting and important message goes out from a university saying it's going to be hot, use carbon fertilizer. It's a correct message and goes to many people. Actually, that should have been only gone to the tomato farmers in that area where it's the weather is hot. Right? Even then also, what does farmer understand for kind of carbon fertilizer? Where does he gets it? Right? So if it's a marketplace is intelligent, once it sees that, like, this is the kind of the need that farmers in this area faces, it should actually aggregate the demand now. How much of that carbon fertilizer is required in that area, right? Kind of anticipate as well as aggregate the demand and connect it to the suppliers of that carbon fertilizer in that area. And even like, now it's more of a push model we're talking about. Agribusinesses are ready and they want to do the business and they have the stock. All they want is that, like, this aggregated demand, anticipated and aggregated. Particularly, let's say if we have some farmer has a pest problem, like, he suddenly goes into the shop, or like, they need it immediately. They can't wait for, like, next week or that kind of stuff. So some level of anticipations are required. Anticipations are nothing but, like, what we call it the predictions in artificial intelligence, right? And once we aggregate, anticipate, aggregate, connect with different players, right? And also think about, like, the other aspects, like, when outputs, particularly when it comes to the output, you're discussing about a deal between two players from location A to location B, a cotton needs to be shipped. Obviously, transporters needs to be involved in that, so that, like, they also see the demand that is coming up, and so that they can plan their activities better. So all these things, like, involving this artificial intelligence, in keep on using this lot of data, again, the large number of small players and so many small activities happening, and using the artificial intelligence to kind of keep on anticipating, aggregating and connecting is definitely going to help a lot. I mean, again, it's not going to solve the problem in terms of 90% accuracy in terms of, like, those numbers, but it is going to give a macro view of, like, both demand and supply aggregations. As I said last time, I was sharing that with you. Sickles, the farmers in one particular area, they were buying it for 200 rupees. It's a stainless steel, you don't need to sharpen it, and those kind of sickles. 200 rupees was the market price. A simple aggregation at that FPO showed us that, like, they require about 5,000 sickles. Right. Now, the aggregation, who is going to put it in the marketplace? Again, AI needs to kick in here, that automatically push this need. Okay. What kind of sickles are required and how much in quantity and whom should be contacted. And when our engine actually pushed it to the marketplace, a manufacturer from Hosur actually, like, participated in that, and he supplied it, including transportation, for 80 rupees.
Wow. Against 200.
Against 200. And again, it goes back to a little bit into the adoption that you asked, Vivek, right? And with this kind of, the examples are, like, the clear value adding things shown to the farmers or FPOs or agribusinesses. Everyone is adopting. And, like, think about agribusiness looking at this, saying that, okay, I can see the aggregated demand. Why would he not want to join this transformation, right? So we are using, actually, like, again, even as I said, the Kalgudi, we use a lot of artificial intelligence. Particularly, we even, like, digitize the crop calendars to understand at what level and what farmers and, like, where they are going to need what kind of activity, whether it's information, inputs, and those things, and then aggregate this demand and supply and connect it with agribusinesses.
See, aggregators, which is becoming a prominent word in country today. Something unique I saw in Kalgudi was that you are in from both ends. You are into supplying offering inputs and also helping the output in the either the direct format or in the process format. There are, I mean, if I'll have to use some of these names, like you have today AgroStar, you have Dehat, you have INI. So they are into one side. Like if you take AgroStar and Dehat, probably they are into offering inputs only to the farmers. INI is taking the output from the farmers and either selling in the open market or branding and going it outside. Why did you choose this model of combining these two together?
Vivek, go ahead.
Okay.
So let me probably take it on behalf of Vivek.
That's better.
So so if you are looking at the agriculture, right? Like so let me take a step back and give a kind of an example here, right? So yeah, we were talking to this prawn culture, the prawn farmers, right? And we were talking to some of the importers in Australia, okay, about what is the price ranges like they are offering the Indian prawn or versus compared with the Thailand prawns, right? And they are offering much higher percentage. Sometimes it is going up to 100% more than our prawn. So effectively, again, we were trying to look at why is that? And again, is it a problem with our prawn or our culture, the way that we do the culture, or is the way that we use pesticides? In fact, all those things are not really the cases. And in fact, if you take a look at both the prawns, it's very difficult to tell the difference. Maybe physically people you can tell the difference who is from the Thailand side or Indian side, but at a prawn it's very difficult to show the difference. But then still that there's a huge difference in the pricing. So the big problem that they told was, you guys you're not transparent and not traceable, right? The two problems, right? One is traceability. Traceability, let's put it aside for a minute. The transparency, right? So we don't tell about anything about our processes, what we are doing, how we are doing, what kind of inputs we are using, and that kind of stuff. And they are doing it. The Thailand is doing it. Now, not being transparent about what we are doing, we are considered as something, we must be doing something really wrong.
Absolutely.
That's why you are hiding things, right? So when we're looking at, again, coming back from the market driven, right? This is the world in the food industry, agriculture, in everywhere. It should be traceable, it should be transparent, it should be, safe, and no child labor was used. You name it, there are 100 parameters people are looking at in the market. It's not just export. Even in India, given a chance, if you go to the supermarket and one says, this is what I have used, and other says, I don't tell you what I have used, but mine is great, right? Which one would you buy? Right? So that is where that the market driven thing needs to come. This whole activity needs to be integrated, starting from the seed and the information received, the inputs used, services used, and all these things needs to be integrated. But again, the problem is, again, I asked this question, how many of you actually remember maybe the last year, if you were contracted some kind of flu, what medicine have you used? For me, I don't know. Even if last month I have used some medicine, I don't even keep track of it.
True.
But do we expect farmers to keep track of every medicine and every process that they've used for that particular farm? It's not. It's it's injustice to the farmers to kind of expect them to do something of this sort. So that's where we connected all these dots and keep creating these digital trails. So which the trails will be used for the AI to kind of keep aggregating and anticipating what else can be connected with respect to digital value chains. And also at every level, showcasing everything transparently, this is how it has been produced. And finally, when it reaches to the consumer, or when it goes to the usage, give the traceability that all the way up to the farmer, to the seed, to information provided. And any of the link broken, you're actually breaking the link of transparency, traceability, and everything depends on that, the marketing efforts rather than the real value of the produce that our farmers are growing.
Want to add something, Vivek?
Yeah, so adding to the whole thing that Raj mentioned, See, where we see ourselves as an organization, our core strength is technical capabilities. And that's where we are in this whole business for. We are probably, and we don't think we will ever be the best trader. We don't want to be. We can't be great. We don't get at all into providing technical inputs. We don't think we are the masters. There are very large organizations across the country who provide that information. They understand all that best. Similarly, whether it's trading on inputs or outputs, I don't think we at all aspire for that. And we know, and that's our premise, that excellent players exist in each of these areas. Now, once we are looking at our core strength, which is technology, and within that technology, largely digital capabilities, which is the strength that Raj and the team have built up over a long period of time. It's their core area, right from their Google and other days. That's our core strength. Now, once we are in that, applying that into a space, there is no rationale for us to restrict it to one corner. Either information asymmetry or supply or inputs or outputs. They are all, and anyhow, the key factor is the net result by providing it in a comprehensive manner is a great thing that we provide by being able to provide traceability, etc. Those are all end products of what we do. But to answer your question that why are we into all the areas and not focused only on one of those areas, because our core strength is something else. And we are focused on bringing the best of that. And I think also what keeps happening is we find that this is like an onion which you keep peeling, and you keep, every day we find more and more applications. The more we peel, we find more applications. We talk about outputs, etc. Suddenly last week we came across a whole application that we've developed for helping procurement processes for large organizations. So there are very many areas, and that's our versatility in this space to provide, using digital capabilities across the board. So there's no reason for us to be into one area only in that space.
I'll come again. I'll continue with you, Vivek. With so much offerings, see, the transaction involves, of course, Raj mentioned about transparency and all those things. But still, I would like to know from you how the trade or the transaction that has been done, how are the risks, disputes are handled, if at all they arise, or what are the ways you ensure that these things are kept at minimum?
Yeah, so two factors what raises disputes. First is if between two players, two people having a transaction, if you don't have a clarity on what are you exchanging or having the transaction about. So that's the whole area of providing standards. Now, obviously, standardization in the whole agriculture ecosystem has been there. It's not something that we are reinventing. Agriculture trading has happened for the last many centuries and happened across seas. But providing standards as the system expands and we're getting more into it depth is a key factor. So that's where we come in, and that helps a lot. So if you're, say, as Raj was talking about, say, an electronic product like an iPhone, you know exactly what you're discussing between two players. But here it's not that easy. So bringing in the standardization is a very critical part, and that helps to reduce any kind of disputes if you can bring that together. The second is as much transparency as possible. So that digital transactions bring that dramatically. At each stage of a transaction, if it's recorded digitally and it's open for others to inspect and go back to, the disputes get resolved. It doesn't. So the first step is to minimize disputes by having standards of your transaction. The second is, if there is a dispute, you have a transparent mechanism to fall back onto. So that enables the whole commerce, the whole ecosystem to move ahead in a dynamic manner and be a much larger, bigger ecosystem. And that part, at times we are looking at just from an angle of exchanging agriculture produce. But if you look at all the players at each stage, whether they are logistics providers, whether they are the intermediary, the financial intermediaries, their challenges, or the processors, each of them, if they can get this, if they can have a recourse to excellent standards in what they are to deal with, and have a transparent mechanism by which the whole process is happening, it makes the whole system much blossom and bloom much more in that manner. It expands dramatically.
Yeah, I think, after hearing both of you for about an hour, I mean, interacting with you, not just hearing, Raj, I come back to you as probably as a case study. I would like to use this as a question. No, when I met you over a year, not even 6-8 months back, when I heard, I felt, is it possible to build a system like this? But today, we are convinced that yes, this is possible to build a system like this. So, what's your experience from Kalgudi's practicing this?
Yeah. So the point is, building a system is probably the easiest one with respect to technology, right? So we have probably we provide systems for the world from India, right?
Yes.
Many of the software things. So building system is not a problem at all, but making it and putting it to use is the biggest challenge in this area. What we have seen is that, like, let's say the gratification in this area is key, and we expect this system to be used across the ecosystem, right? And without the gratification at every connection, every the dot that we connected, if they don't have the gratification, and they don't use the system. So let's talk about a case study. Like, what are the different kind of system components come together? Let's say there is a self-help group in the northern AP, I think Palasa, some area. They exported pickles to Russia, right? And but I want to take this view that system using meaning smartphones and somebody is looking at a trends and graphs. No, that's not how it works in this sector. And the lady did not even doesn't even have a smartphone.
Yeah, you mentioned.
Right. So how did it happen then? Then there are many more things. The ripple effects of that actually was seen all the way to the farmers who supplied let's say mango pickle, right? Mangoes to her, and the farmer to the imports, and everything is connected. And this lady did not even again, as I said, don't even use the smartphone. How even she got this order, right? So she actually participates in that, we create an output store, kind of e-commerce store, where it's not an inventory model where our people don't have the inventories to keep it, and like Amazon kind of stuff. And they make it when the mangoes are available, and they don't when they're not. So the e-commerce store actually brings them on board. And again, they don't know how to describe the product also, right? So we take help from either universities or government organizations or NGOs to help that woman to come on board. So now she came on board, and she did not even know that she was online and selling things online, right? The first thing that we worked with her is about her inputs. Again, coming to that, right? So she was buying a label for 7 rupees to stick it onto that the plastic jar, right? And that too, she had some thoughts about the color and this kind of stuff. Absolutely no way to change. If she wants to change, go to the town, and they don't get into that. Yeah. So we worked with HP in Delhi, Hewlett Packard, and created a system where that many people like her collectively can order with slight changes in the colors and backgrounds, and they supplied for 1 rupee 70 paisa shipped, right? A great looking professional quality label, right? Because and other inputs for her in terms of the mangoes and maybe the spices and all these things. Generally what happens is they try to buy it when it is required, and it's already very expensive because you're not getting the economies of scale, right? And sometimes their businesses fail because of lack of inputs than that lack of orders, right? So what we do next is we anticipate all that pickle making or the manufacturing groups, and now we help them to connect with the FPOs or the farmers who can supply that in bulk. Again, huge saving, a good 30% saving from the markets. They get the inputs, right? And then when the order is like, this is her product is online in emahila.org or like in wherever. So somebody from Russia actually like, we came to know that like, they are actually this, the medical colleges, many of the Indian students are there, and they want all these things from India.
Okay.
Right. So they started saying, hey, we want supply of like, this 500 kgs of this pickle, a ton of this pickle and that kind of stuff. But this lady was not using any of the smartphone. She doesn't even know. Now the aggregation comes into the picture, supply aggregation. She cannot supply the whole 500 kgs of pickle as well. So that's where that like, we move it to a collaborative assisted commerce, we call it on our platform, where somebody, whether it's an NGO or whether it is just one of the lady itself, like, who is more educated, or we do for a fee. So we help negotiate. That's where like, Vivek was also saying in terms of understanding the real need. They wanted ABCD parameters, check boxes, and like, this standard is their export standards or whatever are there. All those things are negotiated and helped both of them to understand these things, and also created an escrow account. And she finally like, participated her part. She only supplied, let's say, the mango pickle. Right?
Oh.
And she got her money. But now the story did not stop there. Right? It actually involves other people, the agribusinesses or the small entrepreneurs in the local area, who did the quality check and packaging for a fee. It's like an Uberization at the local level.
Yeah.
Now come back to the mango FPO, who supplied mangoes to them. And they're already on board, and they're getting their like, the output marketplaces and input marketplaces. And the inputs, they were buying, let's say, this pheromone traps. Everything, a minimum of 30% value we could show. That's a minimum, like, for that input things. And these mango farmers were helped by horticulture department in terms of that, like, the information and all these things. So if you see that, like, this is a big platform where everyone plays their own role. If it's a scientist, they look for questions coming up and they answer the questions for their own gratification, that like, they get the benefit of how many questions they're answering. And like, we also use AI to help it to reach more. So they are benefited. An organization running like, many of these information dissemination people, they get benefit from like, overall statistics. Inputs players sees it only for like, as a marketplace activity. The output bulk buyer sees it as like an output supply aggregation activity. And small micro entrepreneurs like, sees it as a marketplace to sell their produce. And rural youth or local other SHGs sees it as an opportunity to kind of, for livelihood, providing these services. So all these people like, painstakingly connected, and they see their own small app that like, okay, they are only looking at like, I have a task, I am answering questions and I'm doing it. But inherent behind the scenes, it's a big platform in works to connecting all these dots.
See, that's something, a system being practiced at your level and being made practiced by even the most, what do you call, novice or who never knew. I mean, it's an amazing example is that the person doesn't even have a smartphone, but you're getting it done, and so much cost saving, and finally reaching the target customers also. Now, I think I've enjoyed talking to both of you. Let audience enjoy talking to you now. Friends who would like to talk to Raj and Vivek, please raise your hands. I'll take questions from you. Meanwhile, already going up. So I'll take, intermittently, I'll also take questions which have come in the Q&A, Raj and Vivek, you have already seen that. So let me take a question from Sanoj Mohanty. What is supply chain system? How is it helpful for an entrepreneur to be successful one?
So let me take that question. So supply chain system, again, we are looking at two kinds of supply chain systems. One is the backward and forward, right? The forward supply chain systems in terms of, how once the produce is done in terms of how it goes to the mandis and like, from there goes to the aggregation points and all those things is one aspect. The other backward supply chain system is like, a lot more inefficient, and it's open for like, more entrepreneurs coming in and like, taking part in that. For as simple as, let's say, we get orders for a rural, in a rural setting, whether it is a delivery of a small things to be delivered for a farmer with respect to pesticides or fertilizer, micronutrients, or actually bringing back the produce of the FPO might be having some processed material, or self-help group or somebody has created these pickles. The supply chain there is completely broken at this point of time, and there is a lot of value in terms of providing services to them for a fee. And in fact, the supply chain system in the backward, particularly in the rural setting, is at least 300% less inefficient than the forward linkages kind of thing. So this, we are looking at one system where Uberizing the supply chain, rather decentralized supply chain system, that's what we call it. A kind of Uberizing this work in the rural setting, and somebody can come and play on that with whatever, whether they're procuring the items or whether shipping the items, or actually participating in kind of in a micro C&F, where they have a smaller godowns wherein that these things can come and get aggregated and then distributed. And those models are also being worked out. But if anything specific, I forgot his name, sorry. If anything specific, you just send me a mail or talk to me. We can talk further on that, which supply chain we are talking about and what are the opportunities in there.
Great. Yeah. Let me take now a live question from Chengappa. Mr. Chengappa, can you unmute and put a question? And if you have someone specific in mind, you can mention.
Thank you, Raj Agrawal. I appreciate both the speakers pointing out the real issues and where the private is taking a lot of role in linking farmers to market. I must mention I was a vice chancellor of the university. Now I am also I'm on the board of the Tata Coffee. I am on the board of the Tata Tasty Bite Eatables. I also work with a large number of farmers. I must say the first thing we must all do is there should be a good private-public partnership.
Absolutely.
See why? I just give an example saying that nowadays you go to any farmer, he is able to produce, but the thing is they are not able to market. This is the question that is being faced when you go for any of the farmers. This thing, they are ready to produce anything. Our farmers are really good. Only thing is they are not able to market because of the inherent difficulties existing in the marketing system. So if there is I quote, if there is a marketing extension built in our extension system, it will help a great deal. So that the linking farmers to market is the key. Second is, as Vivek really mentioned, we'll have to do a lot of aggregating this thing. The kind of aggregation that's the experiments going on now is, too small and is not being replicated. This is the biggest problem. But if you ask me, in the whole of the agriculture sector, if you really see, one of the sectors which has really succeeded very well, wherein though the production and the marketing are linked together, is the poultry industry. Both you are mentioning about the backward and the forward integration. Today, poultry, 5,000 birds is not at all economical. The scale has come because of this, because of the technology, because of the linking to the market. This has to be really seen as a real success story. So my this thing, as I said, is clearly the marketing extension, then private-public partnership, because the universities have their own, plus points. Universities have their own minus points. Even the private players also, they have their own minus points, and they have the plus points. And also, this is where, if we come together, we did a lot of experience. Sorry, one more minute, Raju. What I want to say is, for example, if you take the gherkin industry in India, when I was the vice chancellor, the gherkin growers were facing a lot of problems. Now, they were not able to get the consultants from abroad who charge very heavy. Then we wrote a project for FEDA. Today, you see the gherkin industry, the way the university and the Gherkin Growers Association working. Today in and around Bangalore, gherkin is one of the most prosperous because there was a very good private-public partnership. This is where, we don't come together because there's some problem, in the system. What he was mentioning, the ecosystem is there is a problem in the ecosystem. I think this is where, if you can do it, the farmers will benefit. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, it was a great suggestion from your end. Thanks, Dr. Bean, on our show. We are honored, and you've been so regular on this. Thank you so much.
Could I just add to that, Raj, to Sir's suggestions?
Yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely correct, sir. And obviously, with your vast experience and in-depth working in this area, you've added the right thought process to it. The way public-private partnership needs to look at this whole system, where we have a very, very large number of players, is it needs to be the catalyst. It should stray away from being the implementer. That has been the role, and if we keep those two lines together, there is a vast opportunity to be covered. Obviously, the public sector and the government have a role that they need to enhance. Their role is to build a larger economy and a larger activity for such a large workforce. So their role cannot be diminished. But they, as long as their focus is on the being the catalyst, as you said in the Gherkin example, where they through a certain mechanism you could bring in some experts who could guide the whole activity, and the implementation remains with a very large number of private producers. The ecosystem will keep flourishing.
Yeah, just to add one more point
Yes.
there, Dr. Chengappa, again, like, thanks for, your thought process. And things are actually like, changing in the right direction, I would say. In fact, like, the whole state of Sikkim came forward to bring an entire farmers, all, organic certified by virtue, onto the Kalgudi platform to provide both backward and forward linkages and inputs connected. And we are talking about like much larger transparency and traceability and the market access to the whole set of farmers there. And we are waiting for the COVID to pass, probably right after the COVID actually take care of that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
For example, I work closely with the coffee group. For example, the Coorg Planters Association, Karnataka Plant. They are very well organized.
Correct.
And they see, for example, the biggest problem of Indian farmer is he doesn't know the market. He has never met the consumer.
Correct.
See, but in a commodity like coffee, the producer knows what the consumer wants.
Yeah.
See, that makes a lot of difference. And who has to do it? That's important. See, Coffee Board was there. Coffee Board is completely vanished because
I think
government took a decision that the coffee marketing should be sold out of the Coffee Board, but the growers came together. They came out of the clutches of the Coffee Board because it was a monopoly power. I'm the one who helped them to write.
Yes.
Thanks,
yeah.
In fact, I went with the delegation to Manmohan Singh at that time. He was a finance minister. He asked not 50%. He said, "You ask full or be with the Coffee Board?" He said, that was the question. In just 5 minutes, he decided. That's changed the whole system now.
I think, that's correct, doctor. That's something like, like we at Ray Consulting, we introduced a term. We always speak about farm to folk. Now we are telling, why not look at folk to farm? So in every segment, I think that should help. Thank you, doctor. Thanks for being on this.
Farmers organization. That's the only way it will work.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll read out a question. Probably if he's there online, I would like to ask him directly. There's a question from Shivam Krish. Shivam, if you are there, you can raise your hand. I'll allow you to speak. Is a question to Raj. He's there. I think let him put a question directly to. Yes, Shivam.
Hi, Raj, can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. So Raj, I'm wondering, one of the big problems in selling produce, particularly from farmers.
Shivam, can you introduce yourself? Of course, I know you, but for the rest of the world.
Yeah. So Raj, I run a startup company in Adelaide, Australia, and we are developing technologies that will allow small scale farmers to quality assess their produce using AI and image processing. So we are interested to know how that would help platforms like y'all that have to sell, produce in a way that can be quality assured using AI. So I'm just wondering what you're using right now, because one of the big blocks in e-commerce with small producers is the ability to see the product and assess it properly.
Yeah.
So what are your
great
thoughts
question,
on that?
Shivam. We are not actively using any technology to assess the quality, particularly the AI technology. we are using most of the AI in terms of assessing that, like, the pests and, like, understanding the problems and connecting kind of stuff. That's where our interest mostly on. But coming to that, like, the quality assessment, um, what we are doing is, like, as I said, assisted commerce, where we are actually reacting at this point of time to the buyer needs. For example, like, we are dealing with, like, the mirchi, chili, uh, with a large buyer, like, who wants to import, and it's again, like, it's a COVID and that kind of stuff. And the buyer sets forward, like, certain parameters in terms of, let's say, this is the moisture level, or, like, whatever that spice level and all those things. Those things we are actually, like, currently going by, like, whatever the systems are available in the most of the procurement areas, we are doing that. And when it comes to the we are actually, like, integrating those technologies and giving it back. And to that extent, we have also integrated IoTs and that kind of stuff as well, with respect to the moisture sensors and those things. And if it comes to the fruits and vegetables, let's say we use that the sweetness meter. I forgot what that is called. But I totally understand that, like, where you're coming from, but, like, we'll be very glad, and, like, we'll be happy to talk to you further on this, that there are some parameters obviously can be verified just by the images, and might not be completely good enough for the buyer to make a decision, but that can be a starting point. And that changes from the image to image, of course, like, the fruits and vegetables and goes with a different kind of imaging and parameters, and grain, cereals, the cotton goes with a different kind of things. But I would be happy to kind of, talk to you further on this to see whatever goes to the marketplace goes with the basic parameters of, like, these things are available, and we should be able to, like, work together on that.
Thanks, Raj. That's very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Shiv. It's 10, almost 10 there, and you're still with us. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, I'll request Mr. Sudhir Goyal to speak. Mr. Sudhir Goyal.
Yeah, I am a former additional chief secretary, government of Maharashtra. Am I audible, Raj? Yeah, my question is, what is the business model of Kalgudi when they are connecting the dots in a value chain?
So you're a chief secretary of finance or something? Okay, sorry. Basically, like, we are a success fee model only, sir. Bringing the farmers on board, or information dissemination, and all those things are actually, that those expenses are taken care by the either universities or government departments, and whoever is actually, like, providing that service. We don't charge the farmer or anybody any subscription fee or that kind of stuff. But when we actually aggregate, let's say the sickle example I talked about, we showcase that, like, this 5,000 sickles aggregated demand is there, and, like, we posted it into the marketplace automatically, connected with the buyer or the seller, and when the transaction happens, we take a transaction fee. And generally, we have three major marketplaces, Sudhir sir. That one is that input marketplace, and output B2B marketplace, and output B2C marketplace. So input B2B, it ranges from anywhere 5 to 7%, including the bank charges and that kind of stuff. Outputs are much lower. It runs into the points of percentage, less than 1. And consumer is slightly higher, because that, like, there is a lot of effort in terms of customer support and, like, all those calls. Because people still expect Amazon kind of experience. Right. So these three are the success fee only we take. We don't take any kind of, regular, no advertisements. We don't, like, push any company to, like, to buy or to sell or any kind of stuff. Absolutely no advertisements we do. But we also white label some of our solutions. A very large fertilizer company also in the north is using our solution. They're completely white label, completely running on the Kalgudi platform. And they have their store, they have community engagement, they have farmer engagement on the platform. Again, they pay a small success fee.
How to multiply it as a business model in private sector?
This model, sir, like, again, what we are seeing, as I said, right, like, we handled 50 billion USD in a state in 5 years. And we see a lot of an opportunity just by the success fee model. And we are eyeing at a very large number already. without changing much the model.
My question was how to multiply such platforms in the country where there are localized or maybe global or national value chains connected on the platform by a private sector which thrives on the service charge.
Okay. I think the key problem again, like comes in, sir, is the digitization. Properly digitizing the not just the farmer digitization in terms of where they are and what kind of Aadhaar numbers. That's not what I'm talking about. From the business perspective, with respect to crop calendar digitization, that effort hasn't been done, and standardizing the commodities. If this digital creating this this digital vocabulary taken care by, let's say, government sectors or like NGOs or that kind of stuff, that enables what I can call is like agri-business digital stack. If that can be provided and that can be created, many businesses will start coming onto it and utilizing this aggregation and start providing the locally services.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for being on our show so regularly. Thank you so much. I have a question. Probably that question is an anonymous who's put a question. What kind of impact do you think the after effects of COVID on the way agriculture works? Just everybody's mind. And then I'll take one final question audio, and then we'll sum up.
Vivek, you want to take it?
I could try and guess. I think everybody is, first of all, what will be the impact of COVID, etc. This is still guesswork for everybody. Let me add my guess to it as well. I think the trends that we've seen in the last few months is obviously the consumer, particularly the urban consumer, and both nationally and globally, is going to be looking for far more transparency in his dealings with the products that he is having. So, and there's a whole thought process of consumers looking for products that add to a sustainable activity. So that's going to be a key factor in the kind of items that or produce that will be in demand. Obviously, linked to that is traceability will become increasingly more important, both from an economic perspective, but that we have already seen in the last 3-4 months is for intermediate trade. To some extent domestically, but at least definitely global trade in this area is becoming more and more stringent on traceability. If you were to check any large institution working with developing countries for agriculture, they're rolling out RFPs by the left, right, and center to develop traceable ecosystems for respective countries. So the large importing countries and trade are increasingly demanding in-depth traceability. Not easy to provide. I think it will keep evolving, but that's a demand that is already out from both from the consumer end and linked to that from the trading end. They will, some extent, think of, again, this is more from the consumer end, looking at more, we have all this thing of health food, wellness food, etc. All will be there, but let's see how that pans out. It will remain a key demand area, and where consumers, obviously urban consumers, want the best of everything. They would want something that is as fresh as this morning, but delivered to them in the most convenient manner. That, as a consumer, we have the right to ask for whatever. That will be the requirement, and so processed foods. The kind of growth that they've had over the last 30, 40, 50 years, I would say, if you take the Western countries, most of it started developing in the 50s onwards. There will be slightly slower growth on that. There'll be a far more desire to have more fresh items rather than processed foods. So that's going to change the impact. These are going to remain immediately after COVID and probably for the next decade or so, we are going to see this shift in consumer demand. And the way we help, we are all, the ecosystem is market driven. So the market is going to ask for this and we will all work towards providing that.
Good, thanks. We'll take a question from Neha. Neha, can you come online? Neha Jarpade, are you there? Okay. Yeah, she is there. Yeah, Neha, you can introduce yourself. Okay. There was a question from Pangotang V. So if you are there, I would like you to speak directly. Well, yes.
Yes. Yes. Very good evening to one and all.
Good evening.
Yeah, this is Pumgothang. Basically, I'm from Manipur. Actually, I'm working as a project manager with ICICI Foundation.
Great.
Since 2009. Yeah. What we have done towards livelihood promotion program is in Assam, we have been mobilizing a group of women's, and we are working on, banana bark value-added product. Banana has been considered in Assam as just, a fruit consumption, right? Just for the fruit. But most of the bark and the flowers are being get wasted. So what we have done as an ICICI Foundation organization, we provide a technical training program so that they are able to, generate wealth out of waste. So what we have done right now is we have come up with, various bark value-added product. So what the issues that we are facing is on marketing about the product. What Raj has told us about the, Mahila market, mahila.org. So how do we as an organization support our women to access this website or the system that has been created by you, Kalgudi? What will be the process and what will be the inventory cost for that in that sense? Since we are working for the rural communities, right?
Yeah.
For the marginal groups. Yeah, thank
Yes,
you.
yeah. Before we take over, Raj, ICICI Foundation, they do extremely good work on social aspects, and they were the winners of our Agribusiness Summit and Awards in 2019. We were honored to present them with this award through our jury.
Yeah, Mr. Pamgatang, so it's a great question. So, so we do work with this, self-help groups are the rural artisan-based, the products, so bringing them online. So again, the many challenges there. Like, and it's not easy for them to sell online, and like they can't just go to Amazon and start selling because the inventory there and the storage costs, and even if they are not sold, you need to bring it back, and like you can't just guess the demand and supply, and all those issues will come into the picture, right? So what we work is a slightly different way, wherein that we expect you to kind of first digitize this the whole content, and we call it listing, rather than just giving the product name. We expect you to work with us to kind of tell the story behind it. Every product at every place has a story to tell, right? Like when people buy the stories than the product itself rather than the specifications. So once the products are come on board, and all your products, let's say 500 of them are with about 500 groups or whatever, we help you to kind of create a structure of all these people, so that we can manage and see what's happening with all these 500 people, how the orders are coming and what's happening. Then we help you with a platform, through platform, to fulfillment as well, in terms of, let's say, if there is an order coming in, how you participate in the fulfillment with respect to the quality checks and packaging and that kind of stuff, so that some of the group members can be trained to kind of participate in this, so more livelihood comes in there itself, right? So that also we train. And finally, after the fulfillment, the settlements and the money process and all these things are settled, and are pretty much well set, and we are able to see a lot of growth. And the only costing here is, let's say, if we expect us to do the listing and the digitization, there is a cost to it, but we actually don't know much about actually what happens there. So we expect you to do locally there itself. Right. And after that, there is only cost is success fee, where there is an order and which is workable price for you, and you fulfill. There is no other cost of any kind particularly in the rural livelihood for us. And
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Raj.
yeah, please drop a mail to us, and we'll be happy to kind of talk to you further on this.
Manipur is an awesome place.
Sure, I'll do that.
I know the Imphal I used to visit almost every month until a year ago. Next time when I'm there, I'll come and see you. Yeah.
Sure. Always welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, awesome talking to you, Raj and Vivek, and beautiful questions related to what they were looking for. I think you have answered them to their satisfaction. And for me, it was a personal enlightenment, understanding so much technology can do to bring all dots together, put everything in place. And it's just a matter of practice what we are going to do. So thank you so much, Raj and Vivek. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and take care, stay safe. All my audience and attendees, great to have you all as usual. And please visit, we'll upload this show also in the next couple of days on our YouTube channel. So for the other episodes, you can watch YouTube/Ray Consulting. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn as well. So thank you, please take care, and we'll see you soon. And on 5th of September, we have one of the most successful agri leaders in the world, not just in India, Mr. Ram Kaundinya, talking to me. And with him, we are also starting a series called Agri Legends. So he's one of the legends, who has done so much to the agri industry, agri business in the country. So we would be honored to have him on next Saturday at the same time at 4 o'clock. And incidentally, I think Kalgudi is also benefited, or I know Mr. Ram Kaundinya is also part of Kalgudi. That's nice, back-to-back 2 shows. Thank you so much, Raj and Vivek. I'll meet you in person soon.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Raj. Pleasure, everybody. Good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good day and greetings from Seedworks. My name is Vasantawada Venkatram. I work as CEO for Seedworks International Private Limited, based out of Hyderabad, India. Seedworks' vision is to provide superior seed solutions by harnessing technologies and innovation to create value for all stakeholders in a sustainable manner. At Seedworks, we are committed to enhance the livelihood of the farming community by closely working with public, private, and civil society to meet the national goal of doubling up the farmer sector. The introduction of Agriculture 4.0 has paved the way for a new space in agriculture, which we now call as the agri-tech sector. Companies use the latest and emerging technologies in agri-sector as an engine for sustainable growth. At Seedworks, being a life science and technology company, we are focusing on digitization and innovation as levers to meet the social, environmental, and the economic growth of the seed ecosystem.